All right, so now we are done with our API's database related stuff. We have created our entities, migrations, data context. Now it's time to work on the service layer, which will access the data from the database and do the business logic related stuff. Now, for this, first thing we need are data transfer objects. So that those will be the contracts which are going to be shared from and to our API. So, whatever communications we will make from our mobile app to our API or from our API to mobile app, then it should use those data transfer objects. Because these are going to be C sharp objects, C sharp classes, which are going to be used by both of these projects. It's better to have these in a separate project. So for this, I'm going to create a class library project inside this solution. Add new project, and we'll use class library next, and the name we can have social media Maui dot shared next, and we'll use .NET 9 only. Create, and we have our project ready. Now we need to add this project's reference in both of these projects. I recently found out a way which makes it easier to add the dependencies. So usually what I have been doing, that click on the dependencies, add project reference, and then add this. But from one of the video from Milan, I got to know that we can simply drag this project and drop in the dependencies. It actually does the same thing. Add to the dependencies, and now we have added the reference. If we'll check the CS pros of the projects, here we should see that shared project has been added as a project reference in MAUI, and same thing we can see in API project. All right, save everything, and now let's start creating our data transfer objects DTOs. So in shared, first thing I'm going to create a folder named DTOs, and inside this we are going to add our DTOs. So we'll start from the beginning. The first thing we need are user registration. So for this, I'm going to create a class. Let's say register DTO. Okay, and for these, we are going to use records wherever possible. So we'll use public record and register DTO, and it will have simple name, email, password. So string name, string email, and string password. For user photo, we will have a separate call. Okay, so that we'll handle separately. After this registration, we are going to have our login DTO. So public record login DTO, it will have username and password, which we can say email and password. All right. Now, after logging in, we will return some response to the client, the mobile app. It should be the information of the user and a JWT token. Okay, so we need two pieces of information, and we will have the current logged in users information in both in API and in the UI mouse side. So for logged in user, I'm going to create a logged in user DTO, public record logged in user. Okay, and here first thing we are going to have a user ID with ID, then we'll have string name, then we'll have string email, then we are going to have string photo URL. We just need URL, not path, because this is going to be used for display purpose. And because our photo URL is nullable, optional, so we'll have it as string nullable. All right, save it. Now we have logged in user information. So now we need to use the login request response basically. So we'll say public record login response. So when user is trying to log in, what response we should send from API to our mobile app. So we'll provide user information and a token. So here we'll say logged in user and a string token. This is the information we'll return back to the user. All right. Now after this, for all the responses, we are going to use a centralized type. Okay. For this, I am going to use a type. Let's say public record API result. Okay, which will have two things: bool is success if the call was successful, and a nullable error. Okay, so we'll return this thing. Now for success and failure, two types of requests, I'm going to have these static factory methods here to generate these types. So here I'll say public static API result and success. So for success, we know that there is not going to be any error and its success will be true. So from here we can directly return new, true, and just default or just null. And using this, we are actually saying that we are creating a new instance of this API result with setting its success as true and error as null. That is what we need for success. Then we'll use one for failure. So we'll say fail. And when the request is failing, there is some problem. So we will be having some error message. That's we can have here. So we'll say string error message. And from here we'll say new false because its success is false in this case. And the error would be this error message. And now we are good. Now sometimes a lot of times we want to pass some data as well. So with this API result, we will have some data as well. So for this, I'm going to create one more version of this API result. If we don't want to pass any additional data, we'll simply use this one. And if we want to pass some data, then we are going to use a generic version of this API result type. Here we'll say T data, type of data. Inside this, I'm going to have a second parameter as data. And same thing. So with success, we will be having our data because the call was successful. So we should have some data which we'll return to the client. So in the second parameter, we'll simply say data and just return null for the third one. And this should be API result of T data. All right. And if that is failing, then we'll have the second parameter. We'll use the default, whatever default it is. And we can add this null forgiving operator. We know that if it is failing, we'll simply access the error message. We will not access data in this case. So our API result is done. All right. So broadly, we need these things for now, or maybe let's create all the DTOs right away. Register, this should be DTO, login DTO, logged in user, login response, API results. Save everything. Let's move these to separate files. So we'll say move type to login DTO, then logged in user, then login response, and after that API result. And I'm going to have both of these API results in same file. So API result non-generic version and API result with generic version. All right. Okay. Now after login, registration and login, we will come to the adding a new post. Right. So we need to have a post DTO, post save DTO basically. So here we'll say public class save post DTO. Now this is going to be the have first thing post ID, because we can have edit, we will be having edit functionality as well. So when we'll be editing a post, we should have that post ID. Then we'll have the content, which is going to be nullable, of course. So content, post content. then we will be having that image file photo which we can upload. So in ASP.NET Core, basically we use iForm file for this. So we can have that iForm file here, iForm file, and it comes from ASP.NET Core HTTP features. We can have some alternate approach, but for now let's use this iForm file. It will install that, and here we can say file or photo or whatever we want to name it, and this is also going to be nullable. Now for edit case, we are going to have the existing photo URL as well. So we'll say public string existing photo get set, of course. Okay, and then we are going to have our validation, because our DTOs are very thin, very small DTOs, and for data saving, so we can have validate methods inside these DTOs only. So here I'm going to have a method public bool validate. Okay, and here we can simply say if string dot is null or white space content and photo is null. Now content is also not provided, photo is also not provided, so both of these are not provided, so we will not save the post in this case, because at least one uh, of this should be there, either photo or content. If that is the case, both of these things are not provided, we'll simply say return false, validation false. If that's not the case, we'll say return true. You can actually have a shorthand, you can simply say if and then just return and negation of this, but this is clear, so we'll use this one. Now post is saved. Okay, it also needs user ID, but that we can get from the currently logged in users information, the JWT token and all that we'll use later. Now when the saving of post is done, now we need to display a post. So to display a post, we will have one more DTO, public class post DTO. Now it will have a lot of information. First thing, it will have post ID. Okay, then it will have user information. So we'll say wait user ID. Then we are going to have user name, public string public string user name. This is the user name. Then we are going to have string user photo URL. So user photo URL. Now this is nullable. Now after user information, let's have post information. That means the content and photo. So string nullable content and nullable string nullable photo URL, because on the UI we just want to show URL. There is no point of having actual physical path. After that, the date time information. So we are going to have public date time posted on. You can have modified on also if you want to handle something. Let's do this. Let's have it. So modified on, because we already have this in our database, right? Now, in order to display on the UI, we will use only one of these, right? If we have modified on, then we'll use modified on. If we don't have it, then we'll use posted on. Okay, so for this, we can have a computed property here. So we'll say public date time, let's say posted on display. What we are going to display. Here we'll say modified on. If this is null, then we'll use posted on. Now by default, whatever type we send or receive to or from API, it automatically generates or converts it this entire object to JSON. Now this thing, there is no point of transferring this property on the network, because this is actually a computed property. So we can simply get rid of this thing. If we want to, we can simply say JSON ignore on this. Or one more approach could be, because we are using post it on display, so there is no point of using these two. So we can have this thing on these JSON ignore if we are not using these in UI side somewhere. Okay, so we'll see if we want to use this, then we'll see. I think mostly it should work with post on display only, posted on display. All right. After this, the post, some user is viewing this post. So if user has liked this post or bookmarked this post, this is the information we need to have with each and every post which we are showing on the client UI. So here we'll say public bool is liked. Same thing we'll do, public bool is bookmarked. All right. So I think we are good with this post DTO as well, displaying the post basically. All right. Now after displaying the post, we go to the detail page, and on detail page we add comments. Okay. So for comments also we are going to have two DTOs. One is for adding a comment and one is for displaying the comment. Okay. So first we'll say public class save comment DTO. Now each comment will have one post ID to which post this comment belongs to. Then we can have a comment ID as well. And then we are going to have comment text, which will simply use content. And this should be required actually. Okay. Because we are using minimal API, which does not automatically validates the data annotation validations. We can simply have a similar kind of validate method what we have in save post DTO. Similar, it will be very small, but let's have it. So inside this we'll just check for content. All right, then we will have one DTO for comment DTO to display the comments. Okay, now it will have these three things for sure: post ID, comment ID, and content. After this, it will have the user information. So we can simply get these information: user ID, username, and user photo URL. All right, then we will have one uh, date time as well for this comment, when this comment was added. So we will simply say date time added on. And I guess we are good with comment as well. Now, last is notification. Okay, so notification DTO, public class notification is a very small, right? So we can simply have a record for this. Public record notification DTO. It will first thing have for user ID, for which user this notification belongs to. Then string text, what is the notification. Then date time when this was generated. And then nullable post ID, right? These are the information we have for notification DTO. And with this, all our DTOs are ready. Now let's move these DTOs to separate files. So will you move notification DTO to notification DTO.cs, comment DTO to comment DTO, save comment DTO, then post DTO. We'll see if we want to enhance these by adding some other property when we'll be working on these, then we'll see. But for now, I think we have used everything. Save everything. Let's delete this class1.cs which comes automatically when we create the class library projects. We don't need this now. And with this, all our DTOs are ready. Now we can start working on our service layer in our API project.